To me, there are several different ways you can have an effective wrestling television program for my purposes. I don't know about anybody else, but for my purposes at least. You could have some outstanding matches, and that's enough to make it a good show. You could have some great memorable moments or memorable skits or memorable promo segments, and that can help make a show. You could have some crazy swerve or surprise twist and turn. That to me can make for a good show. And sometimes I look at it as the way a show is being presented, and if I am feeling the way a show is being presented, that will sometimes overlook whether a show maybe didn't have the greatest in-ring action or lacked memorable promos or segments. And this week's Impact, I thought, was done very well from a presentation standpoint for my purposes. And as a result, I ended up liking the show very, very much, even though there's not really a whole lot that's going to be memorable about it, and even though there wasn't necessarily a whole lot of great stuff that actually happened on the show itself. Anytime I hear that Aces and Eights music hits, I get that rumbling in my bowels reminding me that this is going to suck and I'd probably be better served taking off a huge hulk of shit. All I'll say is this. Is you kicked off the show with these assholes. You kicked off the show with them talking. Bully Ray, do you know who I am? Yeah, we know who you are. You're the asshat that should have had a very short run as a babyface world champion, and you ended up getting 2 world championship reigns as a heel, as a leader of the stupidest faction in professional wrestling history. We know exactly who the fuck you are. I hope to God that next week this match they've set up, Career versus Club, Anderson versus Bully Ray, no DQ match, I hope this is truly the final nail in the coffin for the stupidest professional wrestling faction in professional wrestling history in the Aces and Eights. Go, Mr. Anderson, go! Go, Mr. Anderson, go! I'm so tired of talking about the Aces and Eights. In fact, if they do have Bully Ray win next week, I'm done talking about the Aces and Eights. I will never mention them ever again, no matter how much longer they're beyond Impact. Period. I really enjoy Bad Influence, and I really enjoy the fact that they seem to be the only people in the entire company that seem to remember there is a television championship, that Abyss has that television title, and he's nowhere to be damn found most weeks. And they're trying to find him because they're trying to get the television title around one of their gorgeous waists. That's good stuff. Joseph Park, Christopher Daniels. Hey, it's whatever. I find it more interesting that later on, Joseph Park comes out and announces that he's challenging his brother Abyss to a match next week. I want to see how they're going to pull this off. I want to see what they're going to do. But thank God for Bad Influence, giving me some entertaining comic relief on Impact every week. I love with the Ethan Carter to the third character, how they're doing this. They are making him an actual representation of the 1% in this country that owns over half the wealth. They get the easy opportunities, they get the easy chances, they get to shit on the little guy, they get benefits that aren't really earned, that aren't really due to them, but they get it because of their positioning, whatever. You know, a lot of times that comes to nepotism. So I actually like what they're doing with Ethan Carter III, because this to me is something that I could take from the wrestling world and relate to in real life scenarios. And that to me is a key thing. You don't have to do anything spectacular or marvelous a lot of times in wrestling. You have to make it something that we can relate to. And I can relate to what they're doing with Ethan Carter III. I think it's a stroke of genius. I really do. So I found out who was going to answer Gail Kim's open challenge, and it was Hannah Blossom. Remember that TNA British boot camp that they did? What the hell ever happened to Rockstar Spud? I'm just wondering. It was good to see a fresh face in the Knockouts division. The match was okay. Yeah, okay. Not great. But again, this to me was more about having a fresh face than necessarily having to have the match be something great. I would think at some point that they're building this up to eventually nobody else is going to answer the challenge, and then Lady Tapa is going to take out Gail Kim and become the new Knockouts champion. I would assume that's where they're going at this point. But it was nice to see Hannah Blossom, because it's a new, fresh face in the Knockouts division, and hopefully this story does at least keep going for a little while. Also, the nice novelty of having Gail Kim defend her Knockouts title every week on television, or at least wrestle every week on television, I should say. That's nice and refreshing. So in the middle of the show, you get Dixie Carter bringing out the other 4 guys that haven't had their first round match in this World Championship tournament. And she's announcing that you've got Bobby Roode versus James Storm, in a bull rope match. You've got Samoa Joe and Magnus in a falls count anywhere match. They're kind of trying to cross promote this 24/7 TNA Impact 365 crap they're doing on YouTube, whatever the case might be. But, I thought Dixie was pretty good here. She's trying to establish that her character is in charge and in control, and trying to overlook the fact that she lost control by allowing her world title to leave the company. I love how they did this Friends of AJ thing, where they're showing clips of AJ defending the belt down in AAA in Mexico. That was good shit. That gave me a chuckle. I like how Samoa Joe came out, too, and said that, when he wins this tournament, and which he's not going to, and he gets the belt, which he's not going to, the first person he's going to defend the belt against is AJ Styles. I thought that was pretty cool. I thought Dixie was pretty good here. I thought this whole segment was actually pretty good here, and I really love the fact that you are making this World Championship tournament the most important part of your show and presentation. A very effective segment. You're laying the seed for a Magnus heel turn. You're reminding people again about the history between James Storm and Bobby Roode. You're reminding people of the history between Samoa Joe and Magnus. You're trying to pump up the importance for these two very big matches next week on your free Turning Point pay-per-view. That's good. That's good. I wish they would build up to their pay-per-views that people pay for once in a while this well, but they do a really good job here, and they did a good job this week, and they're doing a really good job in general of making this World Championship tournament seem like a big fucking deal, and I really appreciate that, and I really like that, and that's why I enjoyed last week's show, and it's why I enjoyed this week's show again for the most part. Just like last week when TNA spent the entire show building up to Hardy and Sabin in the main event in a Full Metal Mayhem match, you got the same thing here this week, building up to Angle versus Austin Aries in their submission match. Now, the match started off pretty well. As you got towards the end, actually, it got a little rough. It got a little choppy, a little botch-filled. The timing was off. The whole flow of the match, the last 3 to 4 minutes, was pretty bad, actually. I would have expected much better out of Angle and Austin Aries. Yeah, I don't know if they weren't clicking, they weren't on the same page. But, this is one of these things that is notorious to me with TNA, is you could have a great first 10 minutes of the match, and then the last few minutes, the part that really matters the most, that you've been setting up to the whole entire time, more often than not, they failed to deliver the goods, and the finish seems to have poor timing, seems to not make a lot of sense, seems to be a little rushed, and seems to lack a lot of impact, to borrow a pun, so to speak. And that's kind of how this match felt. Now, I could sit here and go on a big rant about Kurt Angle beating Austin Aries, but I get the fact that if they are maybe setting up to, down the road, Kurt Angle versus Bobby Roode in this tournament in maybe the semifinal round, and then one of them beats the other, and they have one big blow-off match maybe down the road, then I'm okay with this. I would have preferred to have seen Austin Aries go over Kurt Angle at this point. I don't think you needed to have Kurt Angle win. With Bobby Roode sitting out there on the ramp, why couldn't Bobby Roode interfere and cost Kurt Angle the match? I mean, imagine Kurt Angle is still Kurt Angle. A submission victory by an Austin Aries over a Kurt Angle still carries some weight and still is somewhat of a big deal. But of course, TNA being TNA, when in doubt, they're going to take the old WWE reject and they're going to put them over one of their own guys. It's just the way it is, and sometimes, unfortunately, you have to live with that and accept that when it comes to TNA. I'm not going to totally poon it here because I could see the big picture of what they're trying to set up and what they're trying to do, and that's all fine and good, but I still would have preferred Austin Aries to go over. The bottom line is I thought this show was presented very, very well this week. And I hope TNA continues as they go through the rest of this World Heavyweight Championship tournament, continues to present the show like this because they're making their world title seem like a big deal. And whoever they have win it, which I would assume at this point would be Magnus, it would be a big moment, a big opportunity for him. And then you bring AJ Styles back in and you have a really compelling, interesting feud, in my opinion. Who's the real world champion, AJ Styles versus Magnus, something that WWE tremendously, dramatically dropped the ball on 2 years ago with the Cena CM Punk crap. If they can get this better than the WWE did, then I think this is an encouraging sign for the company heading into 2014. I can't believe I'm saying that.